Alhamdulillah wa salatu wa salam ala rasulillah amma ba'd. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. And welcome to the third day of the winter conference. Today we begin with our Shaykh Dr. Abdul Aziz Sadhan. He'll be going through the lessons of COVID-19. Translating for him is Shaykh Abu Usamah al-Dhahabi.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah wa salatu wa salam ala rasulillahi amma ba'du. Once again, brothers and sisters, thanks for tuning in and welcome to our winter conference. We have a next guest who is not unknown to the community. Alhamdulillah, he's one of the most pleasant and beneficial teachers and shuyukh that we've been honored and blessed to have met, and also to have him in our community giving knowledge and giving advice. He's none other than our Shaykh Abu Umar, Abdul Aziz Sadhan, hafidhahullah ta'ala wa ra'ahu. The Shaykh, mashallah, we mentioned about his credentials many times. You can go back and find out about the details. But for the most part, he is one of the senior students of our Shaykh Abdul Aziz ibn Baz, rahmatullahi alayhi. And other than that, one thing that I would like to share and say about the Shaykh, especially during these tumultuous times, where sometimes the people giving dawah, people who are educating, they're not necessarily understanding what the community needs, like the youngsters, for an example, like the reverts. But the Shaykh Sadhan, Jazahullahu khaira, he is a sociable person, well known for his hilm. He's a man who's halim, easygoing, and knowledgeable, competent. And one of the things that impresses me the most about him is his understanding of speaking to the people according to their needs and their understanding. As well, and I can't forget this, is how he was with our youngsters every time he comes to our community. So without any further ado, we would like the Shaykh to yatafaddal mashkuran lahu.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد. فسيكون حديثي في مجالس متعددة إن شاء الله تعالى يتعلق بقضية العصر، وهي وباء كورونا. وستكون هناك وقفات متنوعة فيها نوع من التحدث عن حكم الله تعالى وعن بعض حكم الله تعالى وأحكامه وما يقدره جل وعلا في هذا الكون.
The Shaykh began his talk by first obviously sending salutations upon the Nabi of Islam sallallahu alaihi wasallam and upon his companions and his family members. And then he went on to mention that he's going to give some talks, bi-idhnillah, and there will be multiple talks. This is not the only one, but there are going to be multiple talks that he would deliver. He's going to deliver. And his lectures are going to be connected to a contemporary issue, an issue that we're living in and with right now, and that is the coronavirus. It's going to deal with things as it relates to COVID-19. In the lessons that he's going to talk and deliver, he's going to have some waqafat that are mutanawwa'a. They're going to be different. He'll deal with corona, but he'll tackle the issue from different angles. He'll talk about, for an example, some of, not all of, some of the wisdom from Allah Azza wa Jal in this issue of corona, because there's wisdom connected to it. He'll also talk about some of the ahkam, the rules and regulations that people should know about the corona. تفضل يا شيخ.
ومن المعلوم قطعا أن كل أمر يقدر في هذا الكون فهو لحكمة بالغة قد تظهر لقوم وقد تخفى على آخرين، ولكن كما قال أهل العلم من أسماء الله تعالى الحكيم، كما قال عز وجل وهو العليم الحكيم، وكان الله عليما حكيما، والحكيم هو الذي يضع الأمور في مواضعها، وحكمة الله بالغة في الكمال أعلاه وفي الحسن منتهى.
The Shaykh, he said, Hafidhahullah Ta'ala, that when he gives his lessons and the lessons that he's going to share with us, as the scholars of Al-Islam have informed us, that Allah Ta'ala is the one who has wisdom and he knows what he is doing and why he does what he's doing. And the wisdom that is connected to what Allah Ta'ala has decreed is going to happen or not happen, he described it as having hikmah baligha, meaning a lot of hikmah, not just something surface, but as baligha, exaggerated, it's a lot. He said in these wisdoms, when certain things happen like the coronavirus, some people, they can understand and they can see and identify and appreciate those wisdoms. And other people, they don't know about them at all. They're not apparent to them. The Shaykh said, whatever the case may be, we're going to share that with you. He went on to mention that the scholars of Islam, they said that Allah Ta'ala has names and he has attributes. And from his names is the name Al-Hakim, the one who is all wise. As he mentioned in the Quran, he said, وَهُوَ عَلِيمٌ Hakim. And verily Allah is all knowing and Allah is all wise. And that's the point. And another ayat of the Quran, Allah Ta'ala said, and verily Allah was Hakim and Allah was Alim. He is Hakim and he is Alim. And another ayat, and there are many ayats that Allah Ta'ala uses the name and describe himself as being Hakim. The wisdom of Allah Ta'ala is complete. It is absolutely complete. And hikmah of Allah means putting things in their proper place. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he is the one who does that for sure. So we're going to deal with that and we're going to discuss that and share that information with you inshallah ta'ala. تفضل يا شيخ.
وهذا الوباء الذي عم وشغل وسائل الإعلام المرئية والمقروءة والمسموعة وأصبح حدث الساعة وأصبح حديث الناس في مجالسهم، وقد عمت به البلوى شرق الأرض وفي غرب الأرض وشمالها وجنوبها ووسطها، وأصبح هذا الوباء أشهر وباء إن صحت العبارة في التعبير، أشهر وباء مر على الأرض في هذه القرون المتأخرة.
The Shaykh, may Allah Azza wa Jal give him the khair of the dunya and the akhirah and have rahmah upon his walidain. He said that this virus, this wabah, this disease of corona, it is a disease that has ammat. It has hit every place and everyone. It's prevalent and it's all over the place. It's everywhere. He said it has become the speech that people are talking about. It's the topic on the tongues of the people. It is the topic that everybody is dealing with in their private gatherings and other than that. Again, he said it has hit everywhere. It's in the east, it's in the west, it's in the north, it's in the south, and it's in all between. In the middle, it's everywhere. He said, and I will go as far as to even say that this virus of corona, it is more prevalent and more famous than any other virus known to mankind in the latter years, in the time that is contemporary, according to what the Shaykh said. تفضل يا شيخ.
وقد كتبت كتابا عن هذا الوباء وسميت الكتاب سنة كورونا ستكون تاريخا، وسبب التسمية بهذه الصيغة أن الناس في بلدانهم والمؤرخون في مصنفاتهم يوثقون وصف العام بحدث، فيقولون مثلا عام الفيل، عام الهجرة، عام الرمادة الذي وقع في عهد الفاروق رضي الله تعالى عنه، وفي الوقت المتأخر يقولون سنوات الحرب العالمية الأولى، سنوات الحرب العالمية الثانية أصبحت تلك الأحداث العظيمة تؤرخ بها التواريخ لعظم شأنها وعظم آثارها على البشرية.
The Shaykh, he went on to mention, Ikhwani, that he has authored a book himself recently as a result of the corona. And he called his book, The Year of Corona is Going to Be Historic, or it is historic. He said the reason for doing that is that in the lands of the people and the countries that they live in, the scholars of Al-Islam in the past and in the present, they used to write books and they used to write about issues that when they happened, you know, accidents and great events would happen, those scholars would write about that thing because of the greatness of what had happened in that year. And then he gave us some examples of that. For an example, the year of the elephant, Am al-Fil, when, as you know, Abraha went to destroy the Kaaba. That's the year of the elephant. So it's known because of that incident. He said also the year of the Hijrah, that the Muslims made Hijrah from Mecca to Medina because of the great issue of Hijrah is called the year of the Hijrah. He also said during the Khilafah of Umar al-Faruq radiyallahu anhu, there was the year of al-Ramada because of what that transpired during that time. He said also World War I, World War II is called that because of the great magnificent issue of the war that took place. So he said that the people who are historians, they would mention these particular incidents because of the impact and the greatness of it. تفضل يا شيخنا.
وما سأذكره في كتابي هذا هو أو ما سأذكره في هذه المجالس هو خلاصة ما دونته في كتابي سنة كورونا ستكون تاريخا، وسأذكر هنا وقفات متنوعة في مجالات شتى. الله تعالى أسأل أن يوفق المتكلم والسامعين للعلم النافع والعمل الصالح.
The Shaykh, he said that during the classes that he's going to deliver in our blessed winter conference, inshallah, he's going to mention what he considers to be the khulasa or the concise version of the book that he has written. He's not going to go through the whole book, but he's going to summarize the book and deliver to us some waqafat, some issues that he wants to share with us, that he feels we need to know and he wants to share with us. And it's going to be in multiple classes. He said, I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give success and tawfiq to the one who is speaking, meaning himself, and to all of those who are listening to it, meaning us, and that he blesses us all for our efforts. تفضل يا شيخ.
تقدم أن من أسماء الله تعالى الحكيم، وأن الحكيم هو الذي يضع الأمور في مواضعها. وفي الناس حكماء، ولكن حكمة البشر قاصرة، يعتريها النقص والخلل والمرض والنسيان والموت. أما حكمة الله بالغة في الكمال أعلاه وفي الحسن منتهاه. فإذا أمر الله فإنما يأمر لحكمة، وإذا نهى فإنما ينهى لحكمة، وإذا قدر فإنما يقدر لحكمة. والله تعالى حكيم في جميع شؤونه عز وجل.
Shaykh began, Ikhwani, by saying, as it relates to wisdom, Allah Ta'ala, as we mentioned earlier, He is Al-Hakim, the one who is all-wise. And Al-Hikmah is putting things in their proper place. And this is what Allah Ta'ala, He does. The Shaykh said, from amongst the human beings, there are people who are hukama, people who are wise. Allah is Hakim, and then there are some other people who have hikmah, they wise. He said, but Allah Ta'ala is all wise. He said that the human being, those from amongst them who have hikmah, they are possessors of wisdom. He says still, no matter how much hikmah they have, their wisdom is still going to be deficient. their wisdom is still going to have khalal. It's not going to be complete. There's going to be some holes here and there. Their hikmah is going to be affected by death. Their hikmah is going to be affected by forgetting. He said, but in the case with Allah Ta'ala, it is not like that. Allah is all wise. So when He orders for something to be done, hikmah is in that. When He makes a nahi and He prohibits something from being done, He said it is complete hikmah in that. When Allah Ta'ala makes a taqdeer and He decrees something, He said that from all angles of that thing that Allah decreed, there's hikmah in it. So the point He's making is the hikmah of Allah Azza wa Jal is baligha, as He mentioned a few times. It is a lot perfect from all angles.
من حكمة الله تعالى البالغة تنوع آياته الزمانية والمكانية. ومن قرأ القرآن الكريم وتبصر في أخبار السنة النبوية وجد عبرا أو يجد عبرا من عظيم حكمة الله تعالى في تقديراته. فقوم يكرمون وقوم يعاقبون، وهناك عقوبات معجلة تكون لقوم ابتلاءات وامتحان ورفع درجات، وتكون لقوم استدراج، وهناك تشريعات حكيمة بليغة فيها مصالح الناس العقدية والتعبدية والسلوكية. وهناك من حكم الله الجزاء بالحسنى لمن أحسن والجزاء بالسيئة لمن أساء ولا يظلم ربك أحدا.
The Shaykh, he said that as it relates to the hikmah of Allah Azza wa Jal, then the hikmah of Allah, it is mutanawwa'. It's, you can say, different, and you'll understand what I mean by that. It's not the same. Everything as it relates to the hikmah of Allah, it has this issue of a tanawwa'. So the individual who's looking at and he's reading the ayat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from Allah ta'ala's hikmah, you can see it, and that in different times and at different places, the case as it relates to Allah ta'ala's hikmah is that it's always going to come out, regardless of the time, regardless of the place. He says, so the individual who reads the Quran and he studies the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he's going to find a lot of lessons and examples that show and indicate the great benefit and the hikmah of Allah Ta'ala and what He has decreed in the taqdirat. And concerning the taqdirat of Allah, for an example, that shows His hikmah is that there are some people in the Quran that have been mentioned, in the sunnah that have been mentioned, people who Allah Ta'ala honored them. And then there are those people who Allah Ta'ala has punished them. And that's from the hikmah, that those would be honored and those would be punished. He said concerning those who were punished, there are some people who Allah punished them right away. That's from the hikmah of Allah, that He would punish them right away. And then there were other people who He punished and He didn't punish them right away. He made a istidraj, where He gave them rope to, destroy themselves or to be destroyed. And the hikmah of Allah as it relates to all of them, there are different levels and darajat of how Allah Azza wa Jal dealt with different people, and all of that is wisdom. He went on to say that when Allah Ta'ala has legislated in the Quran for different people, their legislation was not always exactly the same, but whatever He legislated for any individual group of people, and that is wisdom for the one who reads the Quran and he reads the authentic sunnah. The aqa'id, or the beliefs that He subhanahu wa ta'ala has instructed the people to be upon. The sulukiyat, the behavior that Allah ta'ala has, commanded the people to be upon and what to stay away from. All of that is from the hikmah of Allah. The way that Allah ta'ala has given the reward, the jaza, to those people who did good. The different types of jaza and the different types of rewards that He gave them. And then in contrast to that, we see those people who did bad, we see in the punishment and how Allah dealt with them as well. All of that is hikmah. And we have to know that Allah Ta'ala, He does not oppress anyone, but He puts things in the right place. Subhanahu wa ta'ala. تفضل يا شيخ مشكورا لك.
والذي ينظر في هذه الآيات أو نظر الناس إلى ما يقع من الأحداث الكبار أو عموم الأحداث، ينظر الناس لها بمنظارين: منظار البصر، وهو أن ينظر المرء إلى الحدث بعين البصر المجرد، وهذه النظرة، نظرة البصر، يشترك فيها الحيوان والطائر والمسلم والكافر وكل أحد. أما العبرة فهي نظر البصيرة، أن ينظر ويتأمل، وإن كان المقام مقام خوف خاف، وإن كان مقام رجاء رجا ربه، وإن كان مقام فتنة حذر وحاذر، وهلم جرة.
The Shaykh made a very important point, and he said that as it relates to these ahdath and these occurrences that take place in the life of the people, you'll find people who are living, they will look at these things that are happening. And when they happen, people tend to look at them and consider them in two ways. There are those people who look at what happens and they just see it with their eyes, the eyes that are in their head. And they look at the thing and they see what's going on and they come to know about it because they're dealing with it. The Shaykh said this ability to look at things is something that the animals have the ability to do that. Muslims have the ability to do that. Non-Muslims have the ability to do that. There's not anything necessarily special about that. Everybody and anybody can do that. So that's one way that people look at these issues. He said the second way is the one who looks at it with what he called the manzar of al-basira. He looks at it and he considers it and he concentrates and contemplates and considers the fitna or the issue, the hadith, the thing that has happened. So for an example, when he looks at these things, if it necessitates that you should be afraid, then the person, he becomes afraid. If it's a thing that he sees and he understands, I should have raja and hope that my Lord is going to help me, then that's what the Muslim does, who looks at these things with consideration and contemplation. If the thing that happens is a fitna, then the Muslim who's looking at it with al-basira, he stays away from it. He is warned about it and he disengages and he stays away from it. So these are two ways that people are considering the issue of these ahdath.
ومن آيات الله الكونية مثل هذا الوباء وعموم آيات الله الكونية، هناك آيات للخوف أو للإخافة، وحتى يعتبر الناس لمن كان له قلب أو ألقى السمع وهو شهيد. ومثال ذلك الكسوف والخسوف. كانوا في الجاهلية ينظرون لهذا التغير الكوني بأنه لولادة عظيم أو موت عظيم، فجاء النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم فأبطل هذا الاعتقاد الباطل، وذكر أن الشمس والقمر آيتان من آيات الله لا ينخسفان لموت أحد ولا لحياته. فقوله عليه الصلاة والسلام إن الشمس والقمر آيتان من آيات الله إبطال لمن عبد الكوكبين، وقوله صلى الله عليه وسلم لا ينخسفان لموت أحد ولا لحياته إبطال لاعتقاد الجاهليين الزاعمين بأن الكسوف والخسوف إنما يكون لموت عظيم أو ولادة عظيم. ثم بين صلى الله عليه وسلم بقوله ولكن يخوف الله بهما من يشاء من عباده، فبين أن الشمس والقمر أنهم من آيات الله لا ينخسفان لموت أحد ولا لحياته، وأيضا أمر وحث إذا رأيتم ذلك فافزعوا إلى المساجد. فهذه نظرة البصيرة، التعامل مع الآيات بنظر البصيرة.
The Shaykh went on to say that there are ayat, signs from Allah Ta'ala that He has given in the creation. And some of these signs that he has given them is that they are designed to make people afraid, to make people, afraid and to wake up. The Shaykh, he went on to mention that as Allah mentioned in the Quran, verily those are the signs for the one who has been given a heart and he listens and he is bearing witness to what's going on. So that ayah goes to show that people should have a heart to consider and reflect on things, and they should use their ability to hear and the eyes to take heed of these ayat. He said an example of that is the kusuf, the moon eclipse and the sun eclipse. In the times of al-Jahiliyyah, before the Prophet came, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, if there was a sun eclipse, then the non-Muslims in Jahiliyyah, they would think that the eclipse of the sun, this miraculous incident, they said it happened because of the birth of an important person or because of the death of an important person. So that's why the sun was eclipsed. This is what they understood. And then the Prophet came, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, with his religion, and he destroyed that belief, and he did away with that belief, and he let the people know that the sun and the moon, they are not eclipsed because of the death or the life of any individual. So he destroyed the aqeedah of those people who worshipped like planets and things like that. The kawakib, they didn't, whether it was the sun or the moon. There were people who gave a lot of consideration to the sun, a lot of consideration to the moon, and made those two creations of Allah more than their reality. And also, the Prophet came, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and explained to the people of al-Jahiliyyah, his own people, how this has nothing to do with the reality, that someone being born and someone dying has nothing to do with the eclipse of the sun. He said in the hadith to his companions, verily the sun and the moon are two ayat from the ayat of Allah. They are not eclipsed because of the death of anyone, nor because of the birth of anyone. But if you were to see the eclipse of either one of them, then hurry up and stand up for the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is what he showed us to do as it relates to dealing with the issue. So it goes to show that this is the nazar with basira. When these things happen, we have to consider them not with just our eyes, but with the intellect and so forth and so on. تفضل يا شيخنا.
من باب الفائدة العلمية أو الثقافية، كلمة كورونا، كوفيد 19، هذا المصطلح يقول بعض أهل الطب أن تسمية هذا المرض بكورونا، قرأت أن فيروس هذا المرض تحت المجهر الطبي يشبه التاج، والتاج في اللغة اللاتينية يسمى كورونا. وأما كوفيد الكلمة الأولى اللي هي كوفيد، هذه يقولون الحرف الأول والثاني على بمعنى ديزيز أي مرض، و19 أنه وقع في العام 19 بعد 2000.
Okay, the Shaykh, he now moves to another point, and he wants to mention a benefit that he feels we should know about the breakdown of the actual word corona. Why is it called corona? Why is it called COVID-19? And very briefly, he said that this corona-19, the word corona is derived from a Latin word for crown, corona, crown in Latin. And the doctors, those people who came up with calling it corona, they took it from Latin. The number 19 is because there was a virus that happened in 2019. The word COVID is comprised of co and vid. Put it together and it happened in 2019. So he wanted it to share that with us.
بعد هذا يقال إن المرء قد يكره وقد يحب، قد يكره أمرا في ظاهره الخير، في أثره الخير أو في مآله الخير، وقد يحب شيئا لكن مآله الشر. وعسى أن تكرهوا شيئا وهو خير لكم، وعسى أن تحبوا شيئا وهو شر لكم. لكن المؤمن يتعامل مع الأمور بحسب مرضاة الله تعالى. يفسر هذا قوله صلى الله عليه وسلم: عجبا لأمر المؤمن إن أمره كله له خير، إن أصابته سراء شكر فكان خيرا له، وإن أصابته ضراء صبر فكان خيرا له، وليس ذلك لأحد إلا للمؤمن.
So the Shaykh said that things may happen to an individual. When it happens, a person may like that thing, but the thing has some evil and negativity connected to it. And someone else may dislike the thing, and the thing that he's disliking, it may have an abundant amount of benefit to it. And then he read the ayah of the Quran. It may be that you hate a thing that is good for you, and it may be that you love a thing that is bad for you. Allah knows and you don't know. He went on to mention that the believer is the individual who he looks at things that happen and he just tries to do the best that he can to exist in that thing, following his religion and looking at the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and considering it, regardless of what happens. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "I'm amazed," or amazing is the affair of the believer. The believer, everything connected to him is amazing. And this is only for the mu'min, the believer. If something good were to happen to him, he thanks Allah with shukr, and that's good for him. He get rewards for that. And if something harmful, evil were to happen to him, he would be patient with that thing and have sabr, and that's going to be good for him. And this is only something that is specific to the mu'min, and that's it. تفضل يا شيخ.
وباء كورونا فيه خيرات وعبر وعظات وأشياء كثيرة. وقد يقول قائل: هل هذا الوباء فيه خير؟ نعم، يقدر الله الأمور فيظنها الناس شرا، وفيها خير كثير ومصالح كثيرة.
He went on to mention, Ikhwani, that corona is an issue that has quite a few benefits in it, a lot. And it has signs and it has lessons that we can benefit from. It has a lot of things that we can, say are, good. He said, as it relates to what Allah Ta'ala, He decrees, then whatever amr or whatever issue that Allah Azza wa Jal decrees, there's going to be some benefit in it. A person said, is it possible that Allah Azza wa Jal could decree something and like corona and is benefit in it? He said, yes, this is something that is possible for sure.
وسأبدأ في ذكر خيرات للإسلام عموما من أثر هذا الوباء. أولا، رفع الأذان في أماكن بعد أن كان ممنوعا. في بعض الدول يمنع رفع الأذان، لكن العجب أن بعض مسؤولين في تلك الدول طلب من المسلمين أن يرفعون الأذان في المساجد، بل وبعضهم رفع أو طلب أن يذاع أو يرفع صوت تسجيل القرآن الكريم، سواء بقراءة أئمة المساجد أو بتسجيل صوتي موثق. وذكر بعضهم أن هناك حالة اطمئنان وسكينة، وبخاصة في أوقات الوباء وبقاء الناس في بيوتهم، وإذا مروا في الطرقات يشعرون بسكينة عند سماع القرآن. ومن فضل الله أن بعض أولئك قد أعلن إسلامه، وهذا من فضل الله عز وجل.
The Shaykh, he mentioned, brothers and sisters, that in regards to this virus of corona coming to us, then there's a lot of benefit and a lot of khayr that has come as a result of it. And he wants to give us a few examples right now of what are some of the benefits and what's some of the good that has come from corona being decreed by Allah Azza wa Jalla upon us. He said the first thing that I would like to give as an example of the khair is the adhan of al-Islam. He said there are some countries that did not allow the adhan to be given out loud under normal circumstances. But something happened that was strange, amazing, and that is when the corona came, some of the leaders and responsible people for these countries where the adhan was not allowed to be said out loud, they requested from the Muslims to make the adhan. That in the masjid, they would make the adhan and the adhan would be heard in the village, in the city, out loud, in public. Sometimes the adhan would be made by the imams who were in the mu'adhins that were in the masjid, and sometimes it would just be a recording. Whatever the case was, prior to corona, they were not making the adhan. He said, and the people noticed that, during the time of corona, there's less activity, less traffic. So people are in their homes and they're staying out of, moving around in the streets. So when they hear the Quran and when the people were hearing the adhan, it had an impact and an effect, the sakina, the tranquility that people were experiencing. It was added more sakina, more tranquility as a result of hearing the adhan and hearing the Quran, to the point and degree that Shaykh said there were some people who even announced their Islam as a result of that. They became Muslims as a result of that situation.
أيضا من الخيرات للإسلام تخفيف قيود عن بعض المساجد والمراكز الإسلامية، وهذا أيضا من الخير العظيم.
In addition to the issue of the adhan, the Shaykh said from the khair of the issue of the corona is that there were restrictions that have come as it relates to the Islamic centers and the different masajid. Restrictions have been put in place as a result of the corona.
وأيضا ثالثا اعتراف عدد من الغربيين كتاب وكاتبات بعظمة الإسلام وعظمة تأثير سماع الأذان على النفوس في مثل هذه الأوقات، وكذلك تأثير سماع القرآن الكريم.
The Shaykh said also from the benefits and the khair of the corona coming is that some of the Western people, people from the West, the intellectuals, educated people from amongst them, they have acknowledged the greatness of Islam, and when they saw the way the Muslims are dealing with the corona, what Islam tells us how to deal with it. They have an appreciation for the greatness of Islam, how the adhan is helping the people to calm down, and the effect and the impact that the Quran, the adhan, and the Quran is having upon the people. So they acknowledge that. So this is from the benefits of the corona. تفضل يا شيخ.
ورابعا أيضا من الخيريات خرس بعض أو كثير من الألسنة والأقلام التي كانت تحارب الأذان وتحارب رفع الأذان ورفع الصوت بالقرآن الكريم.
He said the fourth benefit that he wants to mention here from the khair of the corona is that there were many people who used to write and they used to talk against the adhan. They didn't like it, they didn't want it. But when people began to hear the adhan during the circumstances that we're living in during the corona time, a lot of these people came to appreciate the effect and the impact that the Quran and listening to the adhan has had upon the lives of the people in terms of calming people down, emotionally.
وأيضا سقطت شعارات كانت تتهم الإسلام وأن الإسلام دين الوحشية، فبسماع الآيات وأيضا مما يذكر فيشكر مساعدة المسلمين لبعض البلديات هناك وبعض مراكز الطب والسعي في تقديم المساعدات الحسية والمعنوية مما انعكس إيجابيا على المسلمين وعلى الإسلام.
He said that from the khayr that we have seen, that we know that there are a lot of people who are detractors and they criticize different aspects of our religion. They describe Islam as being wild, uncivilized. But when this corona happened, they noticed that many Muslims, they were helping to make things better for society and its people. Whether it was, the Muslims helping the different medical centers in different ways that the Muslims could help. So the fact that these Muslims were doing this, it had a positive effect and impact upon the society and upon the minds of those people, because when the society was in need because of Corona, of the help of the Muslims, we were there to help. And as a result of that, it had a positive effect and impact.
وأيضا وقد تقدم في مجمله تغير نظرة بعض من يسمع عن الإسلام السمعة المشوهة، فلما رأى أثر الأذان وأثر القرآن وتعامل المسلمين بما يليق من التعامل الشرعي الذي هذبهم به الإسلام من التعامل مع الأقدار بالرضا وعدم التسخط والجزع، كان لذلك الأثر العظيم على نفوس أولئك.
He said, we have seen this, as we have already mentioned, that there were a number of people who just had a really bad opinion about our religion based upon not knowing, obviously. He said, but when those individuals saw the effect of the adhan and the effect of the Quran upon people when they were listening to him under these circumstances with Corona, it changed their point of view of what they thought Muslims were and what they thought Islam was. The Shaykh said when those people saw how the Muslims dealt with the issue of Corona, that as Muslims, our religion tells us that we have to be pleased with what Allah Ta'ala decreed, and we have to be patient with it and deal with it appropriately, and not to become those people who are angry with what has happened and look at it in a way that is negative. He said no. They saw the Muslims cooperating in their societies in a way that was legislated because the religion of Islam told them to cooperate, to do good, for an example, and to benefit the society.
بعد هذا خيرات عقدية من أثر هذا الوباء وهي كثيرة، منها ترسيخ وتعميق مبدأ أو عقيدة أن القوة لله جميعا. القوة لله جميعا، وظهر ذلك جليا في المبدأ الخيرية الثانية، وهي ترسيخ وتعميق ضعف المخلوق. الأولى قوة الخالق، والثانية ضعف المخلوق، والثالثة غنى الخالق، وخيرية الرابعة تعميق فقر المخلوق، وأنه لا شيء إذا لم يعينه الله عز وجل.
Shaykh went on to mention, now we're going to shift and go to another topic and talk about the theological benefits of the Corona, things that are connected to the Aqidah and the belief system. There are some benefits that have come, a lot of benefits as it relates to Corona. He mentioned 4. The first one he mentioned was the Corona has shown, as it relates to what we believe, that power and might and ability is for Allah and only Allah. Allah is the one who is supreme in his power, and its ability. That's the first one. He said that comes very, very clear. That lesson, that understanding comes very clear as it relates to Corona. Second thing is that in terms of what Corona has shown in our belief system is that mankind is weak. So the first one, the Khaliq, the Creator, is almighty, all powerful. The second benefit, theological benefit, is that all of mankind and the creation are weak. And the third one that he mentioned is that the Khaliq Allah, the Creator, he is self-sufficient. He is al-Ghani. He's not in need of his creation. We learned that from Corona. And the fourth point in our theological understanding of the benefits and the khair of Corona is that the creation is nothing. They're not self-sufficient. They have to rely on Allah Ta'ala. Without Allah, they are nothing.
ومن الخيريات العقدية الخيرية الخامسة تحقيق مبدأ حسن الظن. تواصل الناس مع بعضهم بعضا بحسن الظن بالله. قد جاء في الحديث القدسي: أنا عند ظن عبدي بي إن ظن خيرا فله أو ظن سوءا فعليه.
The Shaykh said number 5, a benefit that we get in our Aqidah is that this Corona helps us to understand the importance of having what's known as husn al-dhan, to have a positive and optimistic view about what we think about Allah Azza wa Jal. And this comes from the Hadith al-Qudsi, in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, I will be the way my slave, my servant, the way he thinks I am. If he thinks good of me, then it will be good for him. And if he thinks bad of me, evil of me, then it'll be bad for him. So the Corona helped the Muslims to understand we have to have husn al-dhan and a good opinion about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
وأيضا من الخيريات العقدية ما يتعلق بأن هذا الوباء قرب أو تقريب لمشهد يوم القيامة. وبيان ذلك أن في يوم القيامة تذهل المرضعة عما أرضعت. يفر المرء من أخيه وأمه وأبيه. العشار عطلت، والعشار هي النوق إذا قاربت حملها وضع حملها يهتم بها أهلها ويفرحون بقرب ولادتها، لكن عند قرب قيام الساعة تذهل كل مرضعة عما أرضعت وتضع كل ذات حمل حملها وترى الناس سكارى وما هم بسكارى ولكن عذاب الله شديد. وفي آية التكوير: وإذا العشار عطلت. في هذا الوباء تقطعت الزيارات وانقطع كل في بيته. غاب الوالد عن أولاده، الوالد في بيت وأولاده المتزوجون في بيت آخر. ذهل التجار عن تجارتهم، أصبح كل منهم يرعى صحته ويخشى على نفسه. وهذا يذكر بمشهد يوم القيامة.
He went on to mention point number 6, brothers and sisters, and that is that the virus of Corona, as it relates to our Aqidah, has given us kind of like an insight into how Yawm al-Qiyamah is going to be, and that Yawm al-Qiyamah is close. And Corona is kind of like preparing us to get an idea of how that situation is going to be. He said that normally people are sociable and they're loving each other. But at Yawm al-Qiyamah, when that happens, that's not going to be the case. Allah Ta'ala said about Yawm al-Qiyamah in describing people's condition on that day, a person will escape and run away from his brother, and run away from his mother and his father, and run away from his wife and his friend. And everybody is going to feel on that day his own problem. He has to take care of his own problem. He doesn't have time to look at other people. He said, just look at the pregnant woman. I mean, in normal circumstances, when a woman is pregnant, her immediate family and the extended family are very happy that she's pregnant. And as she's carrying her load and getting close to the due date, people are increased with excitement and anticipation and happiness. And when she finally drops the baby, people are happy. He said, but Yawm al-Qiyamah is not like that. Allah Ta'ala mentioned about Yawm al-Qiyamah that every female that is pregnant is going to drop its load. It's going to fall out. And when the load falls out, on that day, people are going to be walking around as if they're drunk, but they're not drunk. But it's from the seriousness and the severity of Yawm al-Qiyamah in this situation. And verily, Allah, His punishment is severe. The Shaykh went on to elaborate on that, to show the connection. He said, so, because of Corona, people have discontinued visiting one another. The father is in his house by himself, and his children are in their house, and they don't visit one another. They have left each other. Everybody is concerned with his own situation. The mother's in the house, and her children are in another house by themselves. He went on to say that even the businessmen, and there are people who want money, but even the businessmen, they have abandoned going and selling and trading because each one is concerned with his health. So one of the benefits of the Corona as it relates to the Aqidah is Corona gives us an insight and an idea of how Yawm al-Qiyamah is going to be, and that people are going to avoid one another. Tafadhal ya Shaykh, barakallah fika.
أقف عند هذا الحد وأستكمل الحديث إن شاء الله تعالى في الحلقة القادمة.
The Shaykh said, okay, now we're going to stop at this particular point, inshallah, and we will resume the other points that we want to mention in our next and upcoming lesson. So we look forward to seeing you then, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Jazakumullah khair wa barakallahu feekum. We hope everyone was able to extract